Good afternoon and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story this hour. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has begun his two-day visit to Saudi Arabia. This marks the Prime Minister's second visit to the kingdom in a span of just 3 years. The visit is likely to open a new chapter in the relations between the two countries. Just a few moments ago, the Prime Minister held a meeting with Abdul Rahman bin Abdul Mohsen Al Fadli, who is the kingdom's Minister of Environment, Water and Agriculture. He also held talks with Mohammed bin Salman Al Raji, the Labour and Social Development Minister of Saudi Arabia. Now, these are part of a long list of meetings that the Prime Minister is scheduled to attend over the course of today. Without a doubt, the highlight of the visit will be the Future Investment Initiative Forum, also called Davos in the Desert, where Modi is the keynote speaker. But this visit will also see him hold talks with various stakeholders in the Saudi royal family, a sign of deepening ties between the two countries. At the top of this list, of course, is the Crown Prince Mohammed Bin Salman, who holds the reins of power in the kingdom. Modi will hold a bilateral with the Crown Prince at around 9:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Now, this will be the 5th time the two will meet. Ahead of their encounter, Modi said, and I quote, "I recall with warmth my previous meetings with him and look forward to meeting him again during this visit. I am confident that under the leadership of His Majesty King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, bilateral relations between India and Saudi Arabia will only grow stronger," unquote. It is a packed schedule for Prime Minister Modi in the lead-up to the meeting with the Crown Prince. He is scheduled to have multiple engagements with ministers of the Saudi government, including the Ministers of Energy, Foreign Affairs and Environment. And then at 4:30 p.m, the King will host the Prime Minister for a lunch, followed by the bilateral meeting. The strategic cooperation between the two countries remains a high priority. As highlighted by Modi in his interview to the Arab News, Modi said that India and Saudi Arabia shared common strategic interests and that he was satisfied with the level of cooperation between the two countries, especially in the field of counter-terrorism. And this is where the signing of the Strategic Partnership Council Agreement comes in. In the Prime Minister's own words, the creation of the Partnership Council will elevate the relations between the countries to new levels. And then there is oil. India's energy requirements are on the rise, and the kingdom has been more than happy to oblige. India imports around 18% of its oil from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Aramco, UAE's ADNOC and India public sector oil companies are jointly developing $44 billion West Coast refinery in Riyadh, Maharashtra, which is also the single largest greenfield refinery in India. An Indian company, Reliance, announced that Saudi Aramco, one of the most valuable and profitable companies in the world, will take a 20% share in the RIL's oil and chemical businesses at the value of a whopping $75 billion. Saudi Arabia is also looking to participate in India's strategic petroleum reserves. The Prime Minister held a meeting with the kingdom's energy minister, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman Al Saud, where all the issues would likely have come up. Now, he is the 4th son of King Salman and the first royal to ever hold the portfolio of energy. No conversation about the India-Saudi Arabia ties is complete without a mention of the people-to-people connect and, more importantly, the Indian diaspora. Numbering close to 2.6 million people, Saudi Arabia boasts of a large Indian community which sends back a whopping $11 billion in remittances, and the launch of the RuPay card in the country will come as a relief to this large diaspora. The goodwill, of course, is being reciprocated, with the kingdom increasing its Hajj quota for India from just over 17 lakhs to 20 lakhs. Ambassador Neelam Dio, director and co-founder of Gateway House, is joining us now live from Mumbai. Good afternoon to you, Ambassador. It's great to have you on the show. Take us through the importance of Modi's visit to Riyadh.
You know, as much as Saudi Arabia knew Indians very well, it is the frequency of the recent visits, Prime Minister Modi himself for a second time in Saudi Arabia, that is actually exposing India to the Saudis, and that is what has provided for the jump in Saudi investment in India and the much greater interest that they are taking in the Indian economy.
There are also very important factors in the bilateral relationship between India and Saudi Arabia. Take us through some of these bilaterals.
Well, the bilateral relationship, of course, in the past has been anchored on two things. One is India as a buyer of Saudi oil, and the other was the presence of the Indian origin community in Saudi Arabia. Up to somewhere around 3 million Indians work there. That meant really that a lot of the Saudi economy was underpinned by the effort of Indian workers, Indian professionals, Indian highly skilled technicians. And although for some years the Saudis have been talking about indigenization of their workforce, and some Indians who had lived and worked there have returned to India, it has been in many ways quite an orderly process. The Indians who have come back in smaller numbers, and their state governments, particularly Kerala, have prepared to receive them back. Perhaps more will come back, but they will come back with skills that will be valuable to India. Skills not only in the oil industry, but also in construction, in hotels, in service industries.
You have touched on the diaspora and the culture. I would like to quickly move on to the energy. Is the energy perhaps the new integrating factor between the two countries?
It has certainly been the most important element in the past and will continue to be. Saudi Arabia needs stable buyers, India needs stable suppliers, and when there is stability in the oil market, the price may move up and down occasionally depending upon geopolitical factors or just disturbances in the region. But at least for our economy, the most important factor is really stability of supply. And Saudi has been a very stable and reliable supplier. But we have moved into upstream and downstream also. Saudi Arabia, as your own commentator mentioned, is now investing in India in the strategic reserves, in refining. And with all of these investments coming in, there is also a build-up in the skill capacity of Indian labor and Indian workers in the oil industry.
Now, you have spoken about the Indian diaspora community in Saudi Arabia, and there are clearly some cultural connects. Take us through some of the important points of these Indian diaspora community in Saudi.
Well, the concerns of a diasporic community are always, again, stable employment, to be paid their wages and their salaries on time, not to become victims in the legal systems of a country which they may not be familiar with and which we ourselves may not know very well. But I think the Indian embassy and the consulates in Saudi Arabia have been caring of the Indian workers there, and we have not had any recent complaints. Of course, some people will have difficulties, and it is incumbent on the Indian government and through the representation of the embassy and consulates to try to help Indians when they fall foul of the law of that country.
Ambassador, we've spoken about energy, trade and culture. I'd like to move on to security. What is, especially with regards to Kashmir, what is Saudi Arabia's position on Kashmir?
You know, it's not even 48 hours since the head of ISIS has been reportedly killed by American Special Forces. I think that's symptomatic of how sensitive the whole region has become to the threat of terrorism. Counterterrorism between India and Saudi Arabia has been growing, and that whole region is in such turmoil. You know, the Iraqi people are on the streets, Syria is caught up in still its civil war. Even Israel, after 11-12 years of Netanyahu, is now looking at a possible new prime minister Benny Gantz. The whole region actually has had so much turbulence that it is looking for stability, and it is looking for countries with which the relationship can be stable. India itself the economy has grown large. Our capacity to absorb oil imports, build up the energy industry, and be a factor for security in the region is increasing, and certainly is welcomed by Saudi Arabia and by the other countries in the region.
Ambassador, thank you for joining us this afternoon. That was Ambassador Neelam Dio, the director and co-founder of Gateway House, joining us for the latest on Prime Minister Modi's visit to Saudi Arabia. Now, Wion's principal diplomatic correspondent, Sadan Sabul, is in Riyadh, where he caught up with the kingdom's Deputy Information Minister, Dr. Khalil Al-Ghamdi, and he touched upon a variety of issues, including the rationale behind Davos in the desert and India's role in Saudi Arabia's vision for 2030. Let's listen in.
The investment forum here in Riyadh has started, and this is the third investment forum taking place under the vision of the king, which is the Vision 2030. With me is the Deputy Information Minister of Saudi Arabia to speak with us about this investment summit. Sir, what's the basic focus of your investment summit, and how many investors you are getting since last 3 years?
Firstly, thank you very much for coming and accepting the invitation. The forum idea is to diversify from the economy sources of the kingdom, from oil to other sources, and of course, as you said, this is the third version of it. In fact, we attract the investment in all the areas. This is meant to be a forum where all those who are interested internationally in investment come and talk together, not necessarily only in Saudi Arabia. It's also an opportunity to communicate and connect people of investment and business from all over the world.
You invited the Indian Prime Minister to speak at the investment forum. We know that the Indian Prime Minister has already been to Saudi Arabia in 2016. This is his second visit to the kingdom. How do you see his visit and, of course, his participation at the investment forum?
We see this as a great opportunity to enforce and emphasize the already strong relationship between the kingdom and India. In fact, our Crown Prince also visited India a couple of months ago. They have he and the delegation, Saudi delegation, have discussed so many opportunities of investment in India. And of course, India is a strategic partner to Saudi Arabia in many areas, including energy, including other economic fields.
Outcomes you expect from Indian Prime Minister's visit to Saudi Arabia? We know it's a short visit, but we do expect a lot on energy. We do expect a lot on people-to-people relation, and of course on the issue of counter-terrorism. Could you just elaborate on that, how both the countries are collaborating?
As I said, there are big projects. There are so many memorandum of understanding, cooperation agreements that will be signed. We have, especially in energy, we have a very deep relation. We have so many opportunities that has already been discussed in the previous visits and will be now coming to the manifestation stage. You will see today the Prime Minister addressing very important projects, strategic projects, long-term projects, and I think this is what should be the relation between the two countries.
From energy to Rupee card, from defense to situation of Indian workers, all will be in focus as Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visits Saudi Arabia. This is his second visit to Saudi Arabia since 2016. Follow me, Siddhant Sibbal, for all the live and latest updates on the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Saudi Arabia, only on Wion.